Hello, mate. You asked me to sort of share with you a little bit about how I'm going about these cases. Um, you know, I've been sort of talking about this for several years now as we've started to build this workflow. We see lots of workflows for individual bits like implants or aligners, or how to place an implant or how to mill a crown. But I don't think we see a lot of workflows about how we can use this in the practice on a daily basis. So this is sort of what I've been doing certainly over the last few years. A few little ideas. Now, this case that I'm going to show you is certainly not perfect. It's actually not finished because we were interrupted by this lovely virus that we're all suffering from at the moment. Um, so, but hopefully it'll give you a good idea about the overview and the workflow that I sort of got going on. So this is, I'm call it a workflow for a more challenging case. So if we look at someone like Ray, um, Ray's just a normal guy. You know, what do we need to know with someone like with Ray? Well, we need to know why he's here, get some ideas of his budget, things like that. And Ray's a guy that's mid to late 60s. His teeth have been wearing down considerably. Things are chipping and breaking. He's a little bit embarrassed about the way things look, and he just wants things to work and stop breaking. He's been to see his own dentist or his normal dentist, as they often call it. Um, and they keep putting little bits of composite on, and strange enough they keep coming off. And he's heard that I'm a bit strange and I look at things a little bit different, so what could I do to help him? But like lots of people of a certain age, maybe he hasn't got quite so much money. He's willing to spend some, but doesn't want to spend a huge amount. And he also has got a realistic expectation. He's also got a realistic expectation about how long these are going to last, and the way we can get from this. So all these things are all sort of separate stories in themselves. But I just want to go ahead and try and give you an idea of a workflow that would work for whether you're going to do very simple stuff, whether we're going to do more complicated, beautiful porcelain, whatever. But it seems to work pretty well with almost everything that we do. So when we see someone like Ray, what is it we want to do? Well, we look at this thing where we're not just going to look at teeth. We're going to look at the whole person and think about what it is we could do. And I mean, Ray, like lots of people, although he might not say it, wants a nice looking smile, but he also wants a nice looking face. And faces are interesting because they give us a lot of clues about what's been going on, and how we might help patients with their treatment. Faces are there for eating, breathing, and communicating. So we all want something. Our brain is programmed to make things that will work in that way for us. So most of us would like a nice face because it gives us those three main things that are really going to enhance our life. When we look at the things that we're more familiar with, well, we certainly like teeth. We like gums. They got to be healthy as well, because nothing exists without the gums being in good order. We want to make sure that our patients don't have cancer. That's a really, really important thing. These are just basic checks. Then, we need to look at the patient's smile, what's appropriate for them. There's lots of different things. Sometimes things that we see, and we're not happy. You look at someone like Ray's teeth, and he's probably an A4, maybe an A9 or something like that. But, he'd like them to be a bit brighter, but he doesn't want them to be crazy white. So we've got to find out what's going to be appropriate for him. He doesn't need them to be perfect either. So again, we've got to try and work out what that means to him. We want these things to work well. It's got to function. So we need them to be able to chew and speak, and lots of different things that we need to happen. And then the last thing that we need as well, or not so much the last thing, but maybe the last piece of this jigsaw, is the airway. Because people need to be able to breathe properly in order to live well and to be healthy. and to endure with this sort of holistic approach that we're looking for. So if we think about that, actually these top ones, these are more like the biological things that we can do. These are things that we're much more familiar with dealing with. But these things at the bottom, we're a little bit less used to dealing with. And strangely enough, it sort of comes back to this face, because if we think about that, actually these things are to do with the face, because airway, breathing, function, eating, and smiling and speech is communication. So these are all really the functions of the face, and that's why looking at faces can really give us some good clues about what's been happening and what we can do to try and make things better for patients. So, I mean, again, that's another story in himself. So let's just take some things for granted with Ray, is that he's not looking after the most spectacular aesthetic result, don't want to spend huge amounts of money, isn't willing to go through loads of different treatments, but would like to stop things falling apart in the way that they are doing. Banking on being around for a few more years yet, and he'd like us to help him keep his teeth there. So this is the basic sort of remit about what it is we're looking for with a patient like Ray. So, when we see a patient like Ray, we're looking at all those things that we've just spoken about. And this is my little system for going through and making sure we don't miss stuff. So you heard me speak a little bit already about why he's here. Sometimes we call this chief complaint, maybe better called reason for attendance. Why is he here? And perhaps even more importantly, why now? Why is it just now that he'd like to get this done? In Ray's case, it's just that he's been getting fed up with these things breaking down, and he's feared that these teeth are going to start just disappearing one by one if he doesn't do something soon. We need to know their history, so we're going to take a history. Strange enough, we can take history of all the things that we just spoke about. History for teeth, history for perio, all those different things. Again, another story in itself. We're going to do a co-diagnostic examination. Examine the patient. The history and the reason for attendance are going to tell us why and what the patient is looking for, and the examination is going to tell us what the patient needs. And our job is to try and bring those two things together to help the patient understand how we can help the patient to develop what they'd like. Once we've done this, then we could maybe take some initial records. Initial records would be photographs. I still think photographs are a great way of communicating. We could take, maybe it's part of your schedule to take some scans or impressions, So certainly in the digital world, I am encouraging people to look into scanning, but, we can still take impressions or take or cast models and then have them scanned and get into the digital world in that way. We need some initial x-rays, whatever is appropriate for each patient. But then we can sit down and we can look at the photographs and we can look at the x-rays, sit with the patient. We can do what I call an initial review, where we start to have a conversation. And I'm trying to work out, where does this patient want to go with their treatment? Do they want to get a whole load of stuff done, really look at this whole picture? Or is it more of a biological approach, maybe a more single tooth approach that they're looking for? But the photos we take them, I always tell the patients, we take them first of all as a record of how they are today, which is really, really important. We're going to take them as a communication tool so they can see what I can see, because unless the patients are weird, you haven't usually seen their mouth the way that we look at it. And thirdly, I tell them that we're going to use those pictures to help us plan the treatment if we get to that stage. So we've got those, we've got the x-rays, and we can really sit and we can start to point out what the problems are and how those problems that we see relate back to what it is that the patient is looking to achieve with this treatment. And it's really important that we do that, because people are always going to get what they want rather than what they need. So if we just tell them they need 6 fillings and some hygiene, don't be surprised if they're not desperately interested. But if we can relate back how these restorations are going to get their mouth healthy, give them a beautiful smile, stop them chipping, all the things that they were asking for, I think we're going to have a much better chance of success. So we're using them really to engage with the patient and to educate the patient, not over-educate the patient. But they've got to understand the things that we're looking at. So that's why we use the pictures and radiographs for that. And we're trying to work out, is this just a general patient, biological patient, that maybe the sort of patients that we're treating routinely, or is this what you might call a more advanced patient, a more challenging case, so that might require a little bit more thought? Because if it is a more advanced patient, and Ray certainly is, then we need some advanced records. We need to get some more information. And the reason why I mention it here is because, sometimes I'm thinking this as an advanced patient, but the patient doesn't think they are. And they're not that interested. They just want to do biology. And as long as they understand that, that's okay. But there's no point me wasting my time doing lots and lots of records on a patient like this, because we're just not going to need them right now. So when the patient's ready, that's when we get going. Sometimes doing their biological treatment is just a great way of getting to know them, encouraging them, and then maybe at the end of that biological treatment, then we will get to do something a little bit more advanced. So like Larry Gazzardo, one of my good mentors, always said to me, date them before you marry them. It's certainly not a bad idea, getting to know someone before you get into treatment that's a little bit more involved. And so if it is an advanced patient, and obviously the reason I'm talking to you about Ray is because he is an advanced patient, then we need some advanced records. Advanced records, traditionally models, FACEBO, bite record. Well, now I can pretty much do all of that with scans, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So this is how Ray presents. You can see, I think we can all agree he has a degree of wear going on with his teeth. I think, we could, if we look at his teeth, he's got some broken restorations. These bits of composite keep flaking off. Gums need a little bit of hygiene. Get on top of that. Cancer, thankfully, there's nothing going wrong with that. Joints are okay. Muscles are okay. I think the teeth are really quite worn down. Smile, we can definitely improve upon it. Ray certainly wants a degree of improvement, although he doesn't want to be have the Simon Cowell effect, or so he told me. So we're looking to see what that would be. Ray's airway appears to be in good shape. We know that from the history, and also we do a little, sleep test, very, very simple sleep test, just to make sure everything's okay with him, and he certainly was. So, this is more of a traditional tooth-based solution that we're looking for here. So he's got pretty worn teeth. If we look at the occlusal views, first of all, we can see that there are restorations pretty much everywhere. We can see that there's a lot of wear in the premolar regions forward. The posterior teeth don't look too bad, but they do have some old silver fillings in. And in conversation with Ray, he's quite happy to maybe change those silver fillings. And the reason for thinking about that is that really gives us a little bit of opportunity to play with vertical dimension as well, because it's going to be easy for us to alter that if we're touching at least one arch. We can also see from the way that lines up, we can see that that everything seems to be in pretty good shape as far as the arch is concerned, but the central incisors are dipping in a little bit. And yes, okay, we could do some ortho, but this is going to be a mainly restorative case. And when you look at this, how much benefit do we gain from it? Because we could probably restore those front teeth and achieve the same sort of solution, particularly for a gentleman of Ray's era. So, sometimes it's appropriate, sometimes it's less appropriate. We just got to think. The main thing that I'm thinking about here is the position of the teeth. Where do they need to go? If I understand the position of the teeth, then the choice of the procedures that we use and the materials that we use is between me and the patient then. And that's going to be different for every patient depending on what it is they're looking for. I know from talking with Ray and looking at the condition of the teeth that maybe more of a restorative option is going to be a good solution for him here. We can also see one of the things I'm looking at this, and we'll look at this in the next slide, is as I'm looking at this, I'm thinking, do I have a path of insertion? Because, I like to be really minimally invasive, and I love adhesive dentistry, and it's great to place composite. But I also have a little rule of thumb, which is if there's a path of insertion, I'd almost always rather do indirect. And I have a lot of digital stuff, so I can make things myself. I can do whatever. But indirect, whether we make it digitally or whether we make it on a model first and then just glue it in, it makes my life easier because I can just glue things on rather than spending hours in someone's mouth trying to tidy things up. So I'm looking at, do we have a path of insertion? What would I need to do to gain a path of insertion? Could I just make some pieces that we could print or mill or even do indirectly on a model and then just glue them on? Because that's going to make my life so much easier. So similarly at the bottom, you can see here we've got very significant wear, particularly from premolar to premolar, a little bit on the molars. But again, what I'm looking at as I look down on this is, do I have a path of insertion? And certainly we do on all these teeth. So this would be an ideal case for me to just make some pieces and stick them on, which is really going to help me a great deal. It's not possible in every case, but in lots of cases, particularly in these wear cases, I just find it so much easier to do it that way. So, we have lots of direct ways that you can do it, but doing it indirectly. And with the advent now, not just of milling, but certainly of printing, where we can print multiple restorations in one fell swoop, this is going to make a massive move forward, I think, in these treatments. We can see with his smile, if we look at his smile, he's got typically what you might call a little bit of reverse smile, the lower right side hanging down a little bit, front's a little bit short perhaps. Left side, we've got a space, so we've got a bit of negative buccal corridor, all the things that we look at. But if we look at the upper left lateral incisor, and maybe even the right lateral incisor, we could certainly, in a nice natural case like this, pretty much accept them as being landmark teeth for us, and maybe make everything else to sort of match in with there. If we look at this tip down smile and we see how these teeth relate to the lip, we can see that we've got a little bit of space that we could bring out those centrals and maybe bring out the buccal corridors a little bit, which not only gives us a better aesthetic result, but it also potentially opens up a little bit of space for envelope of function. And then also, that can also help a little bit with airway as well, as we look at these cases where we're doing a little bit more expansion, if you like. So this is not a big case for expansion, of course. So we're going to do some advanced records. So these are some scans that we took, and you can see here that what I've done is I've sort of estimated the vertical dimension that I think that I'm going to be working at. So I know I'm going to add a few millimeters to the lower incisor. I'm going to add, maybe 0.5 millimeter or 1 millimeter to the upper incisor. And then in centric relation, we were hitting on the back teeth. So I knew I had some space already. So I just need to estimate or guesstimate a little bit about the right space that we needed, using centric relation and using maybe opening the bite a tiny little bit. In this case, we were pretty much able to just use the space from centric relation, just maybe a tiny little bit of opening. So again, that's a whole story in itself. But these, someone who's a little bit class 2, you definitely don't want to be opening the bite too much, because the lower teeth will really get away from the front teeth, and then we won't really be able to get much in the way of guidance. So there's a lot of side streets to go down with these sort of cases. But just to try and give you an overview, but I scan it at the right vertical. If I scan it at the right vertical, I really don't think that I need the face bow then, because I'm not going to be playing with the vertical dimension. So, because my next thing to do in a case like this is to try and make sure that Ray's going to be sort of happy with his smile, and then if I can, is to try this in his mouth. And this is where digital really starts to come to the fore for me. So, if just a little recap so far, if we think about teeth perio cancer, that's sort of more that biological thing. We've got airway. For most of us, I think airway, I would say, is maybe a little bit more specialist at the moment. Depends what country you're in as well. We need to know a lot more about it in order to be able to deal with it. But really what I'm looking for, I like patients, if I can, that don't have airway issues, that don't have TMD issues, and I can, my biggest goal then is to make sure that I don't give them airway or TMD issues. So I got to understand it from that perspective. But airway we certainly need to know about, we need to monitor for. And then I sort of have three groups of patients. I have what I would call TMJ occlusal or functional patients that I need to deal with. And they would be the ones that would probably go for a splint to start off with, get things to achieve a stable condylar position. I have the sort of smile patients, the ones who really just want the smile. Those ones we're looking more at a sort of 2D smile, and then probably eventually doing what I'm calling an ASM, an additive smile mock-up. So we can actually try this in the patient's mouth, whether we do that directly or indirectly. Indirectly is my favorite way of doing it, because again, just get to spend less time messing in the patient's mouth. But I also have quite a lot of patients where they have functional issues and smile issues, and we're going to go through that. Maybe we'll do the splint and the 2D smile, and then we'll do the splint and the additive smile mock-up as well at the same time. So those are the main groups that I'm looking to deal with. Yes, we do have some advanced TMJ issues. We've got to get them stable first. But, ideally, I'm looking for patients that don't have airway issues, that don't really have, if they've got biological issues, we need to get those resolved first. So don't have airway issues or get their airway resolved. Don't have joint issues or we get the joints resolved. Ideally, if they don't have those things, we can press on. That's my sort of favorite patient. I just got to make sure that I don't do anything that would make them more likely to develop any of those situations. So, one of the things that we want to talk about with Ray is, what might this look like for you? So, and this is what is so cool about digital these days. And there's lots and lots of different things out there. There's Smile Designer Pro. I think there's something, I don't know, there's just millions of ways of doing this. But, I'm a 3Shape user. I love Trios, and built into my little system is this little Smile Design program where we can pull off Smile Design. We can change the shapes, change the colors, and in about 10 minutes, we could give Ray a little rendering about what this might look like, and we can sort of show him, okay, Ray, what would you think if it would look something like this? And as long as you make it pretty realistic, and you can spend a little bit of time on there, you can make it very, very realistic to the patient's teeth. So this is a really cool way of seeing if there's an interest in the patient. Similarly with Treatment Simulator, which is a little orthodontic sort of program that just straightens their teeth up. It's not very exact, it's not very scientific, but it gives them an idea about what their teeth would look like. And I've been amazed at how patients that you think may not have been desperately interested, all of a sudden just go, yeah, I'm interested, let's move to the next level. And now, once they get interested, not only do they want to spend a bit more time on there, but they also seem to be a bit more willing to spend a little bit more money. I actually did this Smile Design, took me about 10 minutes. If you don't have it, you can also get the lab to do it for you. That just delays things and probably costs a little bit of money, but it's not desperately expensive. But it's a cool and great way of communicating with the patients. So, whichever of those patients that we have that I spoke about before, whether it's more of a functional issue, a smile issue, or a combination, my goal is to get to a situation where I can present the case to them and then have them say yes before I get to the point of making a full diagnostic wax up. Because that's always been a stumbling block, not just for me, but I think for lots of people, in that, you're thinking the patient might be interested, but the only way you can do this is a full diagnostic wax up. And you're going to either spend hours doing it yourself, or you're going to spend lots of money with the technician, and you're not sure whether the patient would pay that right now because they haven't been motivated enough. They haven't been engaged, and we haven't motivated them enough to want to do that. So what I'm suggesting to you is, let's get them engaged, let them get them motivated. And once we've got that situation, we can present the case. they're much more likely to go ahead with that full diagnostic wax up. So let's just come back a little step with Ray, because this is his additive smile mock-up. And again, we can teach you how to do this. This was done by my friend Shemek from Cosmodent. And really the prescription for this is I'm just going to tell him where I want the lower incised ledge, where I want the upper incised ledge. I've given him an estimation of the vertical dimension that I want to work at. You can see I've got some space between the premolars because those are somewhat worn down as well. I've also calculated the length, the extra length that I've had to create on the front teeth, and that gives me an idea of how much space that I need as well. But this is going to give me that additive smile mock-up that I can just take an impression of, or make a snap-on smile, whichever way it is you want to do it. We can try this in the patient's mouth, and that's going to give us huge amounts of information, okay? Not to just motivate the patient. And it's also, again, one of the cool things with digital is this is really pretty inexpensive to do, and it doesn't take too much time if you want to learn how to do it. So, this is a very simple little mock-up that Shemek did for me. He does it beautifully, like he does everything. But we can see where those teeth have been added on. We just pull these teeth in from a library. And it's like everything else. The cool thing about this is, the other thing with digital is I can get on a call with him, or I can tell him next time, say, you know what, Shemek, I was looking to actually cover the lingual surface a little bit because I want to grab that enamel, so maybe we could do that. Maybe we're going to look at covering the palatal surface a little bit. And we can either change that now, or remembering that this is just a basic guide for us, we could maybe change it when we come to the full mock-up. But you can see here that even by doing a little mini smile on the top, which is first premolar to first premolar, and canine to canine on the bottom, you can see that pretty much already I have lower incised ledge, I have upper incised ledge, and I have my vertical dimension worked out. But not only that, as far as I can see, I pretty much have my guidance worked out as well. So what we can do with this, and again, you could do this and then you could print the model, or in this case, what happened was Shemek did this for me in Sweden, and then he sends me the STL file and we printed the model. If you wanted, the lab can print it for you. But we printed on the model ourselves, and then we make a silicon matrix of it. We get some phenomenal wax ups this way. Most of them are amazing. This one is okay. It's not the best one I've done, so it's probably it's probably a decent one to see. But a lot of them, the standard of waxing that I get with this is superior to analog waxing. So So Shemek sends me this, I print the models, then we make the silicon stent, and then the next thing that we're going to do is we're just going to try this. We're going to put some Luxatemp on, or ProTemp, or whatever it is that you use, and put it over Ray's teeth. And now we can sort of see how this is looking. We can see these are just occlusal views, so we can get a good perspective about the arch form that we've created. We can see the rest position now. We can look at the smile again, and you can see where there's bits of tooth poking through, because we're really not going to be doing much in the way of adding in those teeth. So it really gives us a good perspective and really helps the patient see exactly what it is they're looking for. So you can see here as well, these are things that we're learning. If you look at this wax up, you'll see almost like a fingerprint that's on the surface, and that's the marks from the printing process. What we've learned in between times is that what we can do if we want to be well behaved and get a better result is to actually polish that model before we start, and we can get rid of those print marks before we place the wax, before we place the trial smile. But you can see all the key features. Again, we're not going into smile design here, but all the key features seem to be there. If we look at this tip down smile now, we can see that the upper incised ledges are now in good shape with the inner vermilion board, with the lower lip. Things are looking much nicer. We've got guidance, protrusive and lateral guidance that works. The patient has seen that we haven't changed the gingival margins too much, and he's happy with that. He's not going to be killing us over gingival position here. So everything is working great. And the fact that actually we don't have posterior contact on most of the back teeth at the moment makes it so much easier. The first number that I did with these, I did them full mouth wax ups, hoping that the patient would pay. But I actually began to realize that having the back teeth in the way was a bit of a nuisance. So this is why we do it like this. So now we have a situation, you can see, looks okay. Patient is happy. He's approved the design. Everything's looking okay, seems to work pretty well. So now all I got to do is check my vertical dimension, make sure that I'm happy, make sure I got decent stops on there, check the guidance. We can even check the envelope of function at this stage, make sure everything seems to be in good shape. Now I have the lower incisal edge, I have the upper incisal edge, I have the patient's approval. I'm just going to close them together, stable condylar position, anterior teeth together, and I rescan them at that vertical dimension, and then we could finish the rest of the wax up off. And it makes these cases go so well, you know. So there's all sorts of cool things that we've gotten as well now. If we've got more complex cases, then we can use things like Bellas 3D face scanning software to really accurately mount virtual models and also to assemble a virtual patient. You know, that's useful. We have things like Modjaw, which gives us the function of the patient. So we can use that either in a more conformative way where we just conform to the function that they've got and make sure these teeth don't bash into each other again, or we can use it to monitor maybe how successful we've been in changing the function. Maybe we're looking to give them a splint and change their chewing pattern a little bit, maybe get them towards a more vertical chewing pattern. And then once we've done that, then we know we actually have proof that we've achieved that, and we can move forward. So there's lots of cool things that we can do. What I'm trying to show here is a really simple thing that I think pretty much anyone could do these days. So these are this what I would call this additive smile mock-up, and we can see that everything seems to work pretty well. And Ray has approved this, and now he's happy to go forward. He pays for the full diagnostic wax up, and we can get that done, and then we can work out with him how we're going to do it, and to make sure that we get a result that he's going to be comfortable with. So just to go back one there, just that's, you know, you can see we pretty much take a full set of photos again. I still like photographs a lot, but then we got to think about how we're going to do this. And you know, once we got the design, you could choose to do this. I mean, if Ray had lots of money and you know, was more demanding, then maybe this would be a full porcelain case, no matter which way you do it, whether you do it no prep, whether you do it minimal prep, whether you do it traditional crown. You know, it's going to be up to you. Depends on the case. For us, this was a case that we were looking more composite than anything else. There's advantages and disadvantages to doing that, but Ray was pretty happy. I think, to be honest with you, he'd have walked away with this temporary smile if I'd have let him. So he's pretty happy with that. You know, so we looked at the teeth, we worked out what we needed to add on, and then there was really just a few little changes that we needed to do to create a path of insertion on each of these restorations. And so that's what we did. We just made a few little alterations. We cleaned up. I'm trying to be polite today, so we cleaned off all the old restorations, cleaned away a little bit of decay that were there, and then rescanned them, snapped the wax up back over the top, and basically we in this case we milled the difference. I mean, the cool thing now as we're starting to print things is that this would go even quicker as we can start to print these. Milling, bit of a pain in the behind for me because I've only got one milling chamber. It takes me a little bit of time. With printing, once we know that everything is in place and it's going to work well, we can print multiple restorations at once, and then place them successively. So it's going to be that is already helping us a great deal. It just wasn't what we were going to do for Ray here, to tell the truth. So here he was. This is him with the additive smile mock-up. We did the full wax up, Then he came in and just before we got locked down, we cleaned up all the front teeth and we milled some composite pieces to go over the front teeth. And this was at the end of a few hours. You can see there's things that I would improve. Sometimes we get a little bit more bulbosity, but the cool thing with composite, just polish it back and we can get this looking real good. This is basically just fitted. We haven't tidied up at all really yet. But I would much rather have that situation where I can make these pieces, glue them on, and I can just talk to the patient in between times, rather than have a situation where I've got rubber dam on and I'm fooling around for hours on end trying to do these things. Although sometimes that's a necessary thing to do. So that's how he looked. There are the lowers, as you can see. Just still, you can see his natural tooth underneath. Probably some little bits that I could tidy up for him, but I think he looks pretty decent, and all of our functional and aesthetic goals are there. I say it's not the best case, but I think it does demonstrate how you can use the system that I'm suggesting to you to make these things economical, productive, efficient, and to make sure that we've engaged really, really well with the patient. So my take-home message for you is we need to get the design right. In order to get the design right, we need to understand, we need to come right back to the beginning, look what the patient is looking for, get that complete examination done, understand everything that's there, combine what we found with what the patient wants, and then from there we need to engage and motivate the patient before we go spending lots of time, effort and money to get that full wax up done. And I think digital, one of the really, really, really important things that digital allows us to do is that 2D smile design, which is a great motivational factor. And then this quick and easy additive smile mock-up that not only allows the patient to see their trial smile, but will also give you upper incised ledge, lower incised ledge, and vertical dimension, which is going to make your lives one hell of a lot easier. This is also appropriate for bigger cases. I use it for implant stuff and orthodontic cases to illustrate and educate. It works really, really well. So anyway, I hope that's helpful to you, mate. That's pretty much a decent summary. I mean, every case is a little bit different, but I've tried to share with you how this would work. So this is my sort of little summary for you, especially for you. What you'll see here, the blue squares are the things that the dentist has to do. Yellow squares are the technician's work. Green are the things that either the dentist or the technician could do, and then the purpley coloured ones or the reddy coloured ones are the things that the dentist and the technician do together. So dentist has to do the complete exam. Once, if it's an advanced patient, we're going to take these records, which the dentist could do or the dentist and the technician can do together. Then if we need a splint, we're going to go to that first, 2D smile design to get the patient motivated. That's going to lead us to our additive mock-up smile. Eventually that leads us to our trial smile. That's going to give us what I'm calling key diagnostic reference points: upper incised ledge, lower incised ledge, vertical dimension. So that's my key diagnostic reference points. And then that's going to lead us to our full diagnostic wax up. And then once we have that, you decide how you want to execute the case. But we've been getting some amazing results. We've been getting a lot of great patient buy into this. They really like the way we're presenting these cases now. I'll be honest with you, we did it in the analog world, but it was that middle ground where you really need that 2D and 3D smile design. For those of us who've been doing it a while, maybe got a bit of a reputation, maybe there wasn't much of a problem, but I think for a lot of people out there, trying to communicate the worth and the value of that has been very, very difficult. Digital, I think, is going to be the cool thing, and really working with a great technician is also crucial to this objective. So I hope that's helpful. I hope that helps you understand the way I've been doing things, and give us a call if you want me to answer any questions for you.